Hello, this is Dan Meyer with RCR Wireless News. We're here at the CCA event in Las Vegas, joined by CCA CEO Steve Barry. Steve, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being here and being our media partner.
No problem at all. We appreciate it. We always enjoy coming to this event here. Well, earlier today you had a nice keynote address, a fireside chat with FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler. I know you brought up a lot of great topics. You guys had a great conversation about a number of big topics that are important to your members. Maybe go over a couple of those topics here today too. Obviously the first one was the upcoming spectrum auctions. I know you talked to him a bit about, I guess you were pretty pleased with how the FCC has kind of gone about the rulemaking when it comes to the auctions. I guess maybe touch a bit about how that's gone and how the FCC has kind of handled, I guess, the issues that are really important to your members.
Yeah, absolutely, and we were so grateful that Tom spent the time to come by, and we did. We focused on what I call the oxygen issues for these smaller carriers. I mean, everyone needs access to spectrum. Everyone needs a network issue associated with roaming and a compatible network and devices. And USF is a big issue for most of our smaller carriers that are literally out there in the rural areas trying to serve customers and consumers with quality service. So, yes, Tom was most gracious in talking about the spectrum auction. And I thanked him, and he deserves a big thank you from everyone to design a competitive auction that allows especially small carriers and carriers that have no low-band spectrum to be able to get access to that ecosystem. And that's how these smaller carriers, as you can see, they're going to grow and build a network if they can get access to the 600 megahertz spectrum. And the partial economic areas, the reserve, which Tom Wheeler, and he told you today that he views that as one of the key elements ensuring that we have a competitive wireless marketplace. And I think he's absolutely right. And some of the other areas, the market dominance issue, I think he recognizes that low-band spectrum is critical for everyone. So very good conversation, and but the bottom line was excellent job, in my opinion, by Tom Wheeler's led FCC to provide our carriers the critical access that they need.
Yeah, and obviously he also brought up the fact that you guys, I think you had asked him pointedly, what do you need from us, and he said, show up. And that is, and I think he was actually asking you guys too to kind of be perhaps even more vocal in your participation for it. Is that kind of maybe the next step for CCA and its members is to maybe be a little more vocal and kind of say, hey, these guys aren't going to show up and we are going to be part of this process? Because there is a lot of, it seems, pushback from broadcasters or whatever it's going to be to the process. It seems like that's maybe the next step to really support the FCC on what they're trying to do.
Yes, and I think you're exactly right. When this process first began, it's a two-sided auction, a forward and a reverse auction. And the concern was, will the broadcasters show up? Yeah. And do they know enough about auctions to understand that that this is a great opportunity for them? And so I think a lot of the wireless carriers said, listen, we want the broadcasters to get familiar with the auction process, to realize that they're not having to change essentially their business model, but getting spectrum in the hands of more efficient users is a key public policy goal. So I think we've sort of gone beyond that point of let's get the broadcasters comfortable and familiar. Now let's let them know that we are really committed to coming to this auction and acquiring spectrum that, quite frankly, this may be the first and only opportunity in a decade to get greenfield spectrum at low band spectrum. So this is a must-have for our carriers, and I think hopefully it came across today when I told Tom Wheeler everyone in this room is ready to buy 600 megahertz.
Yeah, it does seem like that's the spectrum auction that people are most interested in. I mean, obviously the AWS-3 is coming up here in the next couple of months, and that's a different, it's a little higher up. I mean, like a lot of your members already have PCS spectrum, so that might not be the biggest draw. But obviously that low band is going to be key for the rural carriers. It's propagation characteristics. I mean, you got to have that low band spectrum.
And on the AWS, I mean, I must admit, they did do 5x5s under CMAs, which allow the smaller carriers to actually fill out their spectrum portfolio and then get aligned with some of the larger carriers. And I think that's going to be helpful for a lot of our small carriers that already have AWS. But I think the 600 megahertz is where most of our carriers are focused on, because that's the ecosystem for the 4G LTE that's very compatible with the 700 they already have.
Worldwide ecosystem for them.
I think it will be.
It'll be big. Another part you brought up with Tom was also looking at the roaming issue. And obviously, there's been a lot of talk recently about the roaming. I know there's going to be probably maybe some more rulemaking on that at some point. But I guess where are we, do you think, on the roaming issue? I mean, has it been solved to your satisfaction? I mean, what needs to be done still with roaming? Because obviously, T-Mobile filed some comments. They're still concerned about the terms of the original 2011 rules on that. Where are we at on that? And do you think there still needs to be some more, I guess, updates to that rule?
Well, as I asked Chairman Wheeler today, I said, do you think we need a little tweaking? I mean, as I said, I'm not aware of any 4G LTE roaming agreements with AT&T and Verizon except for Verizon's LRA program. So, are we where we want to be on roaming? I think that we need a more generous attitude to connecting networks, and I think the roaming mandate would probably be more fulsome if the FCC took a look at it, and it'd be nice if there was a little clearer definition of what was commercially reasonable roaming relationships. And I was very pleased with the chairman and the Wireless Bureau's response today. Is we're looking at it. It's a serious issue. They understand that the current order could possibly be more robust in its practice.
A little clearer, perhaps.
Right.
That's important. I know another topic you brought up with him too was on the device interoperability. I know that was an issue that watching the interaction there between you two, you had your point, and I think you made a great point about what needs to happen. And he had his different viewpoint perhaps on it. I guess how is that? I mean, how can that actually be? I guess the gap there. How can it be bridged? I mean, do you think? Is there a meeting point in the middle there, or is it? I mean, obviously it's hard to tell OEMs what to do, and it sounded like what Wheeler was saying, that you can't really enforce it. But you made the argument that there are rules, or there are in their power to do something. So.
Well, I mean, he's in a tough spot on that because he has limited authority to involve the manufacturers of devices. But in the end, every device has to be licensed to operate on spectrum, and I know it is a very difficult issue for the FCC to get involved in, but my point was if the authority that grants the license were to just ask some questions and say, this is an interesting dilemma. If we're having technology denial, essentially the lack of access to high-end broadband devices in rural, regional markets, and it really means for rural consumers. I don't think you want them to at a disadvantage. Then asking some questions and learning how we could get maybe better cooperation with OEMs and better access to devices would be a very healthy thing to do. So we were asking, let's have some transparency, maybe some discussion, and maybe we can talk about some potential solutions that are business solutions, which could answer some of the FCC's questions. Yeah,
and he seemed like he's pretty open. I mean, he's inviting you guys to make comments, and so it seemed like at least he's willing to listen, which is all you can. That's an important part of it.
That's you're absolutely right, and it's been a long time since anyone addressed that issue at the FCC. I think the last time I remember someone focusing on the device issue was, when the iPhone was originally introduced and it was exclusive only to AT&T, and it stayed that way for almost 4 years. There were a lot of members of Congress saying, why is this? Well, I think we're at another plateau, at another echelon level that we need to say, we've got some really interesting smartphones out there. Why can't everyone have access to that? And because we're using them to access the internet.
Makes sense. Final topic, USF, obviously, various forms of mobility fund or whatever it's going to be. The kind of Wheeler did kind of mention, I think you brought up to him that he was coming into the office in his position. He was kind of in a difficult position because the previous administration had kind of made some rules that, perhaps weren't the best for some rural carriers or different requirements for rural carriers. Do you think that the chairman has got opportunity, or I guess, how is the USF Mobility Fund, all the different permutations there, playing out, and is that going to be some sort of reform there that you guys are perhaps going to be happy with over the next year or two, or how's that playing?
Well, we're gonna pursue this. We filed comments yesterday on USF, which was the reply comments, and we're trying to get them to focus on the fact some of their data, I think, is dated, is out of date, and it doesn't adequately reflect what I think the goal is here. And the goal, he did a really nice job on a speech the other day on broadband and access to broadband. Our points were that wireless may actually be the first adopter of a broadband product for most people, especially low income, minority, economically challenged, young, and especially in those areas where we don't have fiber or you don't have wireline capability. So I think if they'll look at that and look at some of the data and information that we're going to bring to the forefront, and quite frankly, the consumer preferences, and I think that. And Tom is a really, big advocate of a competitive marketplace, and I think you'll see that there's some real pluses to some of our points. We just want the value of mobility to be considered in the process when you're saying what type of access do you have to the internet. The one thing I think we would like to see is technology agnostic program. If we're going to have a support program, a technology agnostic program would be one that everyone could compete equally for access to the funds.
Yes, makes sense. Well, again, it was a great conversation you had with the chairman. Again, another great show for you guys too. So we definitely appreciate taking the time talking with us. Thanks so much for it.
Well, thank you for coming in. It's always great to have you here, and I think our members really enjoy seeing you and talking to you. And so thank you for getting our message out.
No problem. Appreciate it. Thanks so much.